Hello, everybody. Welcome to Juniority. I'm your host, Mona, and today, as always, I have a phenomenal young man on the show. His name is Benjamin Wong, and I'm super excited to chat with him. He is the CEO of Kid CEO Podcast. I'm super excited to chat with Benjamin. Without further ado, let's go ahead and meet Benjamin. Hi, Ben. How are you? Great. I'm doing fantastic. It's so awesome to have you on the show. Thank you for being here. Absolutely. It's such a pleasure. So tell me a little bit about yourself, Ben. Oh, Ben, actually, 1 second. Sorry. Oh, we can't hear you. I just realized. Okay, Ben, say something.
Yep.
There we go. Okay. Now we can hear
All
you.
right.
Fantastic. Well, welcome to the show again.
Thank you.
Ah,
So my name is Benjamin Wong, or most people who call me Ben. I was born in Toronto, Canada, but raised in Los Angeles. I'm 14 years old, an ordinary kid in many ways, except for some hobbies like public speaking, programming, and entrepreneurism that make me different from other kids.
fantastic. And Ben, you actually live right here in Los Angeles where I am, which is really cool.
Oh, wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I live in K-Town.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you again for being on the show. So you are now 14 years old, as you mentioned, and you started your business at the age of 13. Tell me a little bit about why you're interested in entrepreneurship.
I think it was always that fear, or not fear per se, but that not wanting to work a 9 to 5 job, not having to go to work every single day, just having that freedom to live the life that I want, added on to the fact that I was raised in an entrepreneur family.
Yeah.
Both my parents are entrepreneurs, and
Okay.
I kind of grew up seeing both sides of it up until I was like 10, 9, 10, 11, when they worked at a full-time job at the family business, not technically self-employed, compared to when they both left their jobs to go do their own company. When they would be able to go to any of my performances, they would be able to come volunteer at school whenever. If I needed a ride, they could be home in a second. And it was just that kind of freedom and happiness that I always wanted.
That's beautiful. Yeah, it's definitely helpful to have entrepreneurial parents. I definitely had entrepreneurial parents, and it definitely gives you the courage to kind of go on your own because you've seen it, and with your parents doing it. So you're like, okay, this is something I could definitely do. So shout out to mom and dad. That's awesome. So before we talk about Kid CEO Podcast, which is one of your major projects, I'm going to show everybody a little bit about what that looks like, and we'll be right back.
Do something like you're doing, combining sports, maybe something else into community service. What's your advice for them?
I encourage them to approach what they want to do, look at that in the eye, and ask what they want from it. And when they determine what they want from it, then they're able to kind of more clearly outline what their approach will be, what steps they have to take, where they lack knowledge, and therefore where they have to seek knowledge. And I think it's very important for youth to kind of have a positive mindset when approaching different things that are presented to them, so that they're able to have a more positive and excited outlook towards their endeavor.
You to where you are today.
I guess it's something that I've thought about, and I like to said a lot in this interview. Is just there's actually this meme that I've laughed at, and it's funny, but it says winners focus on winning and losers focus on winners, and then you have this picture of like Usain Bolt looking at all the people behind him that he's beating in the race. But like besides the Usain Bolt part, just knowing and feeling proud of what you're doing is something that can propel you. I feel like just knowing that you can like feeling proud of what you're making and also wanting to grow your skills, just not trying to be better than someone else or not trying to be the next whoever, but trying to be you and trying to hone your skills and be great at your craft is something that I feel like
Definitely.
is very
You know,
important.
when you're running the race, look in front of you, don't look at the people behind you.
Well, there you have it, a little bit of your work. It's so amazing. So tell me a little bit about Kid CEO Podcast and what inspired you to start that platform.
So the Kid CEO podcast, when it started, was nowhere even what it was now, not only in terms of the following, but just in terms of the mission of the podcast itself. My entire life, I had always been interested in, I guess, adult topics like finance, investment. My dad even opened a trading investment account for me when I was 11 for my birthday and put some money for me to go invest as a birthday present. And naturally, of course, I want to make money in the stock market. So I, read a lot of articles about trading and finance, and that kind of expertise, I guess, led to a lot of my friends, even teachers, asking me, Ben, what are your stock tips for this week? Ben, how do I go and invest? And from there, I decided, along with my mom's idea, to create a podcast to introduce these, like, again, adult topics to my friends, just to other kids who are similar like me. And then from there, I kind of transitioned into a thing I called the story of a startup about Kidfinity, which was, in a way, so similar to making podcasts about my experience there, until finally, most recently, deciding on my true mission as it is now, on shining a light on other kids who are doing amazing things in this world.
That's beautiful, and I love that evolution of just you discovering all of that. It's so invaluable, and just even looking at your kid podcast page. I see the kind of like growth you've come along the way. Who helps you with your graphic design and everything else? Because it's such like really well put together. And so who is your support there?
Yeah, so when I went to create the podcast, I was in a unique opportunity, as I would call it. I don't think there were other people positioned in that same, luck position that I was in, having parents who are entrepreneurs and they have a graphic designer that we now share to create our graphics. And then in terms of podcast editing or doing social media, I believe that those things are all things that kids can do. And we have an editor, Talia Rahman, and she's 14. One of my classmates at my old school who did the news team with me, and she does all of her editing. And then we have Bella, who does our social media, and then a couple more people doing some other things for the team.
Wow, so this is like a whole team that's putting this together.
Yeah, all kids except for the graphic designer.
All kids. That's amazing. I love it, love it, love it. Your motto is for your Kid CEO podcast is showing the world what kids can do. What are some things that you see kids that are doing in your community and that you feel you'd want the world to know about?
I think there's this kind of stigma that kids should just, stick to school, make school number one. I, in fact, wrote like an Instagram blog post about it, how the term of adults say focus on school is kind of misleading, because while school, of course, is very important, in these early childhood years, personally, I believe other things like starting a company, volunteering, participating in extracurriculars, teach you and make you a much better person for the future ahead, and learning as you go. In fact, I believe there's a lot more learning it comes from experiences than sitting at a desk. And so that kind of leads into the motto of showing kids, other kids, showing adults, and showing everyone that there are amazing things that kids can do. I guess I'll take the latest episode of Adon Mapaya. I think he was on Juniority TV pretty recently. And he just had a simple project at school called Project Funny Time, which led into his organization, Ball for Good, which I believe did like $70,000 in donations to local charities. All just because, I guess he was 13 back then, all just because a 13-year-old decided, you know what, let's try this out. If I fail, I'll fail, but if I succeed, I can do something great. And that's just one example of the amazing things kids can do.
Beautiful. And I love that. Like, even just you guys doing that and learning how much power you have at such a young age is like such an accelerator to keep going. And just like I feel like you guys become more bold to try new things. So I completely agree. You're never too young, that's for sure. And you guys are definitely proving that. So yeah, that's awesome. Another thing that I noticed in your press kit, and you mentioned Talia, so she's your old high school buddy. So what is like the working relationship? Is this something that you guys own together, or is this Benjamin Wong's project and they assist you? Like what is your working relationship?
Yeah, so Talia Rahman, she was in junior high. We were in a news team together, and she always stood out because she did, exemplary work compared to everyone else in the team, and, always went above and beyond. So over the summer, when we had 2 podcasts, before, I guess, around August time, before that, I had just done monologues. So I would just kind of sit there, talk for 20 minutes, put music in the beginning, music at the end, not really much necessary. But when I did my first, I guess, of the Fireflies podcast, the first test on the Kid CEO podcast, talking about the open or closed dates, I called in 2 of my friends. And that one required lots of editing for, audio quality purposes, to make the entire experience better. Yeah. And I knew that I could maybe spend 10 hours sitting at a desk watching YouTube tutorials on how to do editing. Right. But in that same 10 hours, I could do 10 new episodes. So I called up her, I was like, hey, could you help me with this? And she was like, yeah, definitely. And now when we're doing each episode and making it like an episode, not necessarily an interview, like a full story, it makes the experience so much better. In terms of working relationship, I think there's kind of she has a stake in it, definitely, because at 14, we always credit her work at the end in everything we do, saying, this is what she's doing. And hopefully, once the podcast goes to even greater heights, she'll, first of all, have the reputation. We're, of course, going to, compensate her for her work. Absolutely. And she can use it on her resume, go on and do even greater editing work. Absolutely. Fantastic. I love that. And honestly, like, you grow with the people around you. So that's beautiful. It's been over a year since you started your podcast. What are some things that you have learned along the way, whether it's about business or some things that you discovered about yourself? I think, there's, of course, a lot of things that I've learned over this time. But the biggest thing is to, 1, be persistent. Because there are, times in the beginning, throughout that, there have been times when I've been wanting to give up. In fact, after the first 4 episodes, I took a couple months break because of school that kind of got in the way. And what I've just kind of learned is to be persistent no matter what. Like, even if one episode gets hardly any listens, just to keep going through and just keep pushing through it. If there's an obstacle that comes through, just go straight through it. And to never, ever give up no matter what happens. Second thing I've learned is the value of each and every single listener. And my advice for, or my thought process for other kid podcasters out there who are worried that they have like only 5 listens. But if you really think about it, even 5 people is a lot. Like if there's 5 people out there who every single week listen to you, even 5 people is a lot. And to value every single listener, because I really do mean a lot. And third, kind of goes along with it, some of the things I've learned is one of my favorite podcasters said that it's better to try and build engagement with your existing listeners than to go out there and try to get more. Because I don't know how many times I've searched up on Google how to get more podcast listeners. But the real key is engaging the podcast listeners. And that's kind of entirely reshaped the scope of the podcast.
Oh, I love that. Definitely, just valuing the viewers that you have already. That's brilliant. I love that. That's a really good point. What are some areas specifically that you would say are a little bit difficult or challenging for you? And what are some things like habits or techniques that you've developed to kind of, overcome those challenges?
I think the biggest challenge in terms of now what we're doing at Kid CEO, the thing that takes the most time, or I guess it's tied for the two things that take the most time. One is writing questions for the interview. Yeah. Because listeners only hear about 30 minutes, but sometimes our talks go for an hour and a half.
Right.
And of course, even if someone is really talkative and talks a lot, it's kind of difficult for them to talk for an hour and a half about 3 questions. So I like to prepare lots and lots of questions. And originally I would go out there, search questions for author or stuff like that. But now what I've learned is not to even look at questions originally. I'll go on the couch with my iPad and I'll search up YouTube videos about that person. I'll search up articles about that person. I'll go through the Instagram page looking at everything they've done. And then find the most amazing stories, the most inspirational stories, and ask questions about that. The second tied thing that takes the most time is writing the intro monologue, outro monologue.
Yeah.
Originally, I wrote it. Like in the script, I would write those each monologue. But I think it was about like 6th, 7th episode when I kind of stopped using that. Like I had already written a monologue, but I didn't like it because after talking to that person, there was much better things to introduce them with. So starting from then on, I didn't write the intro or the outro and just kind of spoke from the heart about my honest experiences talking to that person.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love that. Yeah. It's like, why stick to a structure or make it mechanical? It's like really tell the audience what you really feel. That's Definitely. Fantastic. That's awesome. So aside from Kid CEO podcast, and I know you touched about it earlier, tell me a little bit about the project that you're working on, Kidfinity, and what you're trying to do through that.
So Kidfinity is basically, I guess, the consolidator for Kid CEO podcast and the Fireflies podcast.
Yeah.
Me and my good friend Noah, actually my neighbor, we both had a common interest in debate, so we decided to start a podcast about teen debate. We've been on a bit of a hiatus right now with that podcast, just kind of balance Kid CEO right now and school. But that podcast, we decided to have Kidfinity to kind of share the resources between it. So we have one more editor who's also a friend of Talia, also 14, who does the Fireflies podcast, and just kind of sharing the resources to make both shows better.
Awesome. And I love that. I really think it's awesome that you're developing your relationships with all these people and collaborating, because working with other people is really important for sure. Cool. So when you're not building your business, you are busy learning new things. What are some things of interest to you?
Recently, I think I have these phrases when I keep going to different things, but recently, my biggest interests were, coding or like programming And then the second, I don't know if it's considered one, but just reading business books. And I think since January, I guess I have this goal, like New Year's resolution of being like a lifelong learner, because the most successful people are lifelong learners. And in the beginning of summer, I did like a law course on online Coursera. I did like a psychology course. But more recently, with the suggestion of Noah, I took up programming. And it seems from a stance difficult and like really, really complicated and expensive. But all I just did, I went on YouTube, I found a 6-hour tutorial about how to program. Mm-hmm. And from there, it's pretty simple to do realistically. And in terms of reading, I never loved reading, but one of my guests, Ariana Fox, I believe she's been on the show possibly,
yeah.
But one of her biggest things with reading is that it's not that kids don't like reading, it's that they don't know the books they like to read. And recently I've learned that I like reading business books, like how to win friends and influence people, like business books, negotiation books, and those entertain me and interest me. So that's been my second biggest learning thing, trying to finish one book a week.
That's fantastic. And I love that you said that, because Chloe was actually interviewing somebody recently, Kayla Spears, who does Storytime with Kayla, and she said, kind of the point that you made, I know some of you don't like to read, but maybe you haven't found, you haven't found out what you love to read. And that's so important. Just some people don't like to read because they haven't found that book that hooks them in, right? I'm kind of the same way. Like I really have to love the book to just like really be in it. So completely agree there. Anything else that you'd like to share with us, or any advice that you would love to share for other young entrepreneurs?
My biggest advice for other young entrepreneurs, I guess also podcasters, which I guess are considered entrepreneurs, but my biggest advice for them is to be persistent. And this kind of encompasses everything I talked about earlier. Be persistent no matter what. There's 500,000 different podcasts last year on Apple Podcasts, which is a lot. And it seems intimidating, except that majority of them don't even go past 7 episodes. And I can't tell you how many podcasts I've seen that will go to 6 episodes or 5 episodes and then just stop. And that's due to persistence. And there's also studies that show there's a majority of podcasts that go past 7 episodes that go on to be very successful. And it's all about persistence. Your first episode isn't going to be great. It's probably not going to be very good.
Yeah, no.
The 10th episode might not be very good either. But it's going to be better than the first.
Yeah.
And if you keep going at it, it's going to get better. And that involves persistence. Even if you get 1 listen on your first episode, keep going. Even if on your 7th episode you get 10 listens, keep going. Because you'll get better. Every episode will get better. And it's not like anyone's judging you, especially if you're a kid. Your podcasting isn't your job. You don't need to pay the mortgage. You don't need to pay the mortgage. You don't need to pay the bills. So you have free reign to go out and take risks. If you're going to make a podcast, you have to guarantee yourself that you're going to go past 7 episodes. Because if you go past 7 episodes, you're much, much more likely to be successful.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for that advice. And finally, last but not least, you are also a violinist. That's so cool. Tell me a little bit about how long you've been playing and why you picked violin.
So I've been playing violin for 8 years now, starting when I was 6 years old.
Wow.
And I come from a musical family. My mom played piano in her childhood. My older sister plays piano. My younger sister plays the harp. And naturally, my mom always wanted us to get into an instrument. So my older sister had piano, but she didn't want me to also do piano. And we decided that we would do instrument. I don't remember if we tried out other instruments, but violin was always the number one option. And from there, there's been, some turbulences in that journey, but it's been really good for my mind, even if, likely I won't be a professional violinist one day. It's very unlikely that'll happen. But either way, my mom always attributes that to the kind of person that we are turning out to be, playing musical instruments, good for development of the mind, memory, and it's been a really great experience there.
That's fantastic. That's really, really cool. Shout out to Mom. And before we go, Ben, go ahead and plug in your social media for people that want to find you.
So you can check me officially, me out on official Benjamin Wong on Instagram, official Benjamin Wong, WONG. And then you can check out the podcast on Instagram at Kid CEO Podcast, Kid CEO Podcast, or you can go on websites benjaminwong.org, kidceopodcast.com, or kidfinity.co.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Ben. I really, really enjoyed having you. If there's anything else you'd like to share, please do so. But it was such an honor to have you.
Of course, that was great fun today.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, I hope we'll have you back on to do a recap somewhere down the road and we can hear all about, what you've been up to. But thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye. Well, everybody, that's our show for today. I really, really enjoyed Benjamin. What an amazing young man. Please go ahead and check Kid CEO Podcast. He is doing amazing things. And, just for my personal experience, listening through what he's created, it's so amazing to see the rapport between his peers and, just like seeing what they talk about and seeing their growth as young individuals. So please go check that out. It's really, really amazing. You can also find us at junioritytv.com. Please go to YouTube and make sure you subscribe and hit that bell so you'll get a notification. Thank you so much and hope to see you again soon. Bye.